So we're in the delicious zone. It's the delicious recap, Andrew, officially.
I feel fantastic. All of the delicious tastiness we have to talk about. I can't wait.
Yeah, this is our recap podcast of the 90s sitcom Family Matters, a staple of Friday nights back in, it started in fall of 89 and it lasted until 98. Now, most of those years from 89 to 97, it ran on ABC. And then like the last season, 97 to 98, was on CBS. But of course, we begin all the way back to the 1989 to 1990 season where it premiered 8:30 Friday nights. I think the first episode date was, yes, I have it here, September 22nd, 1989. Now, Andrew, how old are you?
I am 35 now.
Were you alive then?
I was I was almost 1 year old because it was 6 days before my birthday.
Okay. So I wasn't even alive yet. I do remember this is the same month that my parents got married. I wasn't born until November 27th, 1991. So once we get to, I guess, the 91, 92 season of Family Matters, which I think is like season 3, then I guess we'll talk about like me actually being existent in the world. But it was TGIF Friday night. The lineup for 89-90 television season, it was Full House at 8 p.m. That was like averaging a 15.4 rating. It was like the 21st most watched television show of the season. Family Matters actually averaged not too bad. I mean, for a show that was pretty new, number 40 in the ratings for the entire season. Perfect Strangers at 9. And Free Spirit at 9:30 and 2020 at 10 p.m. So, like, as you were growing up watching Family Matters, did you know that, in fact, it was a spinoff of Perfect Strangers?
No, I actually didn't know that it was a spinoff of Perfect Strangers. I never got into Perfect Strangers, so it was kind of like something that I knew existed, but I never really saw it.
It ran for 8 seasons. It was from 86 to 93 on ABC, also a staple of TGIF. And it was about Larry Appleton and his distant cousin from Eastern Mediterranean Europe. Within that show is how we got introduced to Harriette Winslow, because she became an elevator operator in that environment in Chicago. And Reginald Vell Johnson, who plays Carl Winslow, he guest stars on an episode of Perfect Strangers. Reginald was coming off big. This was shortly after his time as the cop in Die Hard. And then he was brought on for a Perfect Strangers guest appearance as Harriette's husband. And I guess ABC producers, execs just thought they had great chemistry and decided to pair them up for a spinoff. And that's how Family Matters was born.
See, this is amazing because now this is broken my mind in a way to think. Was Die Hard all a part of this universe that was created? And it was just this one thing that Carl never talks to his family about?
He's literally a cop in Die Hard in 1988. And then the next year, it's like, oh, now you're a cop, but in a Friday night family sitcom on a television network. I wish that there was a thread. There might be conspiracy out there, but no, I think that he just got typecasted as a cop and decided, why not? It's good, steady money. Let me play a cop again on TV.
I can see that. I am going to start a conspiracy about it. I feel like this deserves a conspiracy, and if there isn't one, I'm creating it.
Okay, I'm down for that. I'm down for that. We get a show called Family Matters with Carl Winslow, his wife Harriette Winslow, and their children, Eddie, the oldest son, who is a teenager when we meet him, the elder daughter Laura, who I think might be in middle school when we first see her on the show, and younger daughter Judy. So we're talking about the pilot. It was written by William Bickley and Michael Warren. Joel Zwick directed the episode. Can you believe it, Andrew? Back in the day, this episode was seen by 21.9 million viewers.
Oh, that's amazing. I can't believe it. Like, geez.
Like, it's hard for broadcast network shows to get maybe somewhere close to 10 million viewers nowadays. Some have a struggle getting like 5 or 6 or 7 million viewers. So the idea that, especially on a Friday night, which is like notoriously known as like a dead slot in television because, you know, people are going out doing things. They don't have time to sit in and watch TV. The fact that there were 21.9 million people that were like, sure, let's check out this new show called Family Matters. That's pretty good. I mean, it was the 38th highest rated show of the week, like the week of 18th through the 24th in September of 1989. 38th for a show that doesn't get as much credit as it deserves. I mean, at the time, a lot of people were watching. They were giving it a chance, probably because they got the Full House bump. Because usually when you have a very successful show, I think Full House by then was like 2 years into its run. 1. So Full House probably was somewhat successful enough that Family Matters got some of their audience leading into their show, and then boom.
Which is awesome. I wouldn't have thought they had so many viewers. That's an amazing feat.
I know. So to break down the cast, of course, we have Reginald Vell-Johnson as Carl Otis Winslow. Please, Andrew, if you could name your child or your pet someday Otis, that would be great.
I want an Otis so bad.
Have you seen the show Sex Education on Netflix?
No, and I've been meaning to watch it because the cast all are beautiful people, and I need to see what they're about.
So it's a great show, and the main character's name is Otis, and he looks just like an Otis. He has like this white, sort of goofy, geeky, plumpy face. Like he looks like oatmeal. Like anytime I see a guy named Otis, I think, oh, there's a white guy that's as bland as oatmeal.
My cat that I get that's going to be solid white will be named Otis.
Oh, thank you, Andrew. Thank you for that tribute. Jo Marie Peyton France as Harriette Winslow. Now, I stress France because Jo Marie Peyton, she was married 4 times. France was the last name of her first husband, Mark France. Now, for whatever reason, she still took his last name, even though they divorced in 1987, 2 years before Family Matters came out. So do you know why she might have wanted to keep the last name?
I don't know why. I can only speculate. And for me, if my last name could be France, I would keep it.
And we have, of course, the lovely Rosetta Lenoir as Estelle Mother Winslow. I'm assuming, unless she's a vampire, that she's passed away. She actually passed away back in 2002. But I remember Mama Winslow, like, she didn't stay for the entire Family Matters run. So we got to find out about that.
Yes, we want to know about her disappearance.
Yeah, that's another disappearance along with Judy that wasn't really quite explained, I don't think. Darius McCrary as Edward Eddie Winslow. You have Kelly Williams as Laura Lee Winslow. Valerie Jones. Interesting thing to note. In the pilot episode, we have a different Judy Winslow, and this is the only episode that the young actress Valerie Jones was in. I think that this original Judy Winslow was very notable, Andrew, because the way she dressed, like she had this very unnatural Annabelle doll dress fashion about her that just didn't match with the rest of the family.
Yes.
Full disclosure for anybody who doesn't know what me and Andrew look like, we're both Black, so maybe I get a pass for saying this, but she just doesn't look like she's related to everybody else, because like everybody else has like a similar like dark skin African-American tone, and then here's like this mixed light skin looking girl that just comes out of nowhere, and it's like, oh, that's the child of Carl and Harriette who are equally dark skinned. I don't believe that.
Yeah, when I saw her, the first thing I was like, she doesn't match. She doesn't match with this family, and they were so specific to get everybody's skin tone almost the same shade or a hue lighter or darker here and there. And she was just there. And then she had the weird doll clothing. And on top of that, the way she spoke like a Japanese anime character. I'm like, this is weird.
Wait, can you give me a demonstration? Because I didn't really pick up on that. That's really interesting.
So there was one moment where she's talking to little baby Richie and she's like, oh, you're so cute. And it's like, this voice does not match the body that is in front of us. She should have some type of bass to her voice.
I was trying to find online anywhere on Google, like what happened to Valerie Jones? Like, why did she disappear after one episode? No explanation. All Google will tell us is why the next actress who plays Judy, Jamie Foxworth, like the fact that she abruptly left the show like a few seasons in, but we don't know about Valerie. Valerie just came and went. Joseph Julius Wright is credited as Baby Richie, but probably because of child labor laws, like a 50-50 sort of thing between real life twin infants, Joseph and Julius Wright. So they had twin infants who I guess kind of traded time playing Baby Richie in these early episodes. And it's interesting because like literally the same arrangement for Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen when they played like Baby Michelle on Full House. During their baby years, if you've seen those early Full House episodes in the opening credits, they're labeled as Mary-Kate Ashley Olsen, which was just a fancy way of saying, hey, it's 2 children, but we don't want to let you know that 2 different children are playing this character. So let's just combine them into one Dragon Ball Z fusion kind of child. You know?
They knew what they were doing. They had to channel them together, put them in the same space. And they're like, we have somebody who will never be tired. You take one off the charger, you put the next one on it.
Thelma Hopkins is Auntie Rachel Crawford, who's Richie's mom, and frankly should just be Valerie's mom because Judy Winslow looks more like Rachel Crawford than she does like Carl and Harriette Winslow.
Yes, 100% agree.
The opening sequence of this pilot episode. So right off the bat, if you're watching, for those of you listening, and you and I, Andrew, I guess we're included on this as well. Are you watching on Hulu or are you watching through the bootleg stuff?
I actually found a really cute website that's from Japan that has all of the episodes. So I'm watching on there.
So for the opening theme sequence, are you getting the As Days Go By? Are you getting that song?
No. So for the very first episode, the original opening is What a Wonderful World.
Okay, that's really weird because Hulu, if you watch the episode on Hulu legally like I did, it plays the Jesse Frederick song As Days Go By that we hear for a majority of the series. And that's really weird. That's the first thing that I picked up on because I remember in watching Family Matters reruns on TV, the early episodes, you hear Louis Armstrong's What a Wonderful World. But for whatever reason, I'm hearing As Days Go By, like from the get-go on Hulu. And I don't know, maybe it's because the copyright infringement for Louis Armstrong. I have no idea.
I don't know if it was the copyright infringement, but then there's also changes that I have seen through Hulu that were not in the original first set of episodes where they're editing things in. So I think it's just kind of that where they were trying to keep the continuity. And I think the episodes from Hulu are after they started doing the syndication. So, they started to modify things that were originally made in the first season and then completely wipe them out like it didn't exist.
I love Louis Armstrong. He's a legend, but what a song that doesn't really quite put you in the mood for what's supposed to be an upbeat sitcom. Like you have like Harriette Winslow, like, yeah, and then Steve Urkel's like, yeah, did I do that? And then you have Louis Armstrong, I see trees. Like, why am I having this slow song lead me into what is going to be like upbeat, comical family madness?
It definitely doesn't give you upbeat at all. Like when I was watching, I'm like, okay, the opening sequence video doesn't even match his voice in the song. I'm like, what were they thinking for this?
It's awful. But regardless of that Louis Armstrong song being in your version of seeing the pilot episode of Family Matters, we still get the classic 80s, 90s sitcom theme sequence where we see characters in their natural environment, Reginald VelJohnson as Carl coming down the stairs and then all of a sudden giving a, smile to the camera, and then Marie Payton getting up from the piano, giving a smile to the camera, Eddie working in the grocery store, all of a sudden giving a smile to the camera. Like you're still getting all that.
Yes, I think that's so cool. I feel like that's how we should introduce ourselves forever because I've always loved that opening sequence.
The fact of just doing something in your natural habitat and then there's a camera, oh, let me smile. Like, it's just, I don't know. It's such an 80s, 90s sitcom thing that I love so much, and we should probably bring it back.
We should. You can just like, oh, you're here. I didn't know.
Laura dancing in her Walkman. Oh, that really... Did you ever have a Walkman?
Yes, I did. Oh, I loved that thing. It took double D batteries.
I think I briefly had a Walkman before I had a CD player, maybe for like 1 second, and I just thought, I don't get it. And maybe it was like when Walkmans were just going out of fashion.
I got my first Walkman because of the movie National Lampoon European Vacation. And one of the characters on there, the son, he has this cool flat Walkman that was about the width of a cassette player. Well, I'm sorry, of the cassette itself that went inside. And I was like, I want it. Immediately bought it and never put it down.
Yeah, man. Walkmans, they're quite something. And if anybody listening has one, I bet you could like sell it online for like $350 because it's probably as antique and valuable as like the original iPod right now. So as we're still on the opening theme sequence, I think towards the end when we see Rachel, she's really selling, like sniffing flowers happily outside as she's looking to, it's like, oh my God, these are like the best flowers ever.
Yes, Rachel eats the whole opening. She eats and she didn't leave a single crumb. You're just like, ooh, who's Rachel?
Yeah, I love it though. Yeah, Thelma Hopkins has a great smile. I love her. The family is like all bike riding together in downtown Chicago, which, I mean, I don't even know if you would see that nowadays. I just feel like when people think of like Chicago, they think of maybe a more gritty image than, oh, here's this happy Black family riding a bike together in Chicago. I don't know. It just seems way too unrealistic of an image.
It really does. There's nothing natural about it when you look at the scene. None of them look excited to be on these bikes going up a hill over a bridge. It's scary. Yeah. And then you have the next scene in the opening theme sequence where Carl and Eddie are playing basketball. They're doing the worst father-son fist bump handshake thing I've ever seen. And I felt like the actors, Reginald and Darius, they were trying to come up with something on the fly, and then it just kind of didn't work out. I really feel like they told them at the craft services table, hey, you guys just like fist bump and play basketball, but don't stop looking at the camera. And they were just trying to find each other's hands in there. Yeah. It's like, oh, please try so hard to look like a father and son bonding together, enjoying basketball and doing the hip hop dap thing. And then you have Laura and Judy feeding the pigeons, smiling to each other.
and they really loved feeding those pigeons. They were like, wow, this is awesome. When was the last time you saw a kid and another kid just feeding pigeons like they were old people?
Yeah, I have never, even when I was younger, I had no desire to go up to a pigeon and feed it. That just was not a thing.
Like when I've been on the beach as a kid, yes, I would feed pieces of bread to the seagulls. I've always had a fascination with that. But seagulls, like on my non-beach time in a park, I'm not going up to a pigeon saying, hey, you want a piece of my cactus pie? Like, I wouldn't say that.
I just want to know what's in cactus pie at this point. And is it allergic to pigeons, or are pigeons allergic to that?
It might be allergic to some people, but it comes with gritty, prickly love. That's all you need to know.
Hey, a little roughage. I like it.
Family hijinks, Carl putting out something he cooked with a fire extinguisher, Carl and Eddie moving something heavy on the floor while Eddie is holding his large stick thing and he smashes the back door with it. So, of course, you get like, oh my God, this is a happy family, but also they get into some clumsy situations that'll make you laugh.
There's some hijinks happening.
And then we have the final scene in the opening theme sequence where the family is all together in the living room with bright smiles, playing with baby Richie. Maybe it's just me, but I was kind of noticing that Valerie Jones, she looks smaller and slightly darker skinned. Like maybe it was like a different, similarly looking actress who replaced her because maybe Valerie just wasn't available that day or was just too tired and wanted to go home early.
Possibly, because I was looking at that last scene in the opening, and in art history, there's something called hieratic scaling, where they make the more important people bigger or at the forefront of the image. And I noticed this kind of like staged, almost like what's it called when they have baby Jesus in the manger, a nativity scene. If you look at how baby Richie's on the floor, how Carl and oh my God, why am I blanking right now? Carl and Harriette are at the top, the kids are on the side, Rachel is off to the corner. It's very nativity scene. And I was like, okay, I like this. But then it also made me wonder, because we only got Valerie for one episode, was it because she couldn't show up to work and this other actress was like, hey, I'm here, and she fit a little bit better? Because that's a lot of work to film her in the opening and then she's just gone forever.
And boy, if there was actually another actress who subbed in for Valerie in that opening theme sequence and then she found out that she didn't get the part, oh God, can you imagine her heart being broken? Like, I worked so hard for that split-second nativity scene moment.
Right? That poor girl.
So the Hulu synopsis for this episode says, Mother Winslow asserts a little too much authority when she comes to live with her son Carl and his family. I think we open with an exterior shot of the Chicago house, which actually recently I learned was demolished. I'm guessing it was a tourist attraction for a while, and then it's no longer there.
Oh, that's terrible. I was hoping that would still be up and preserved or something.
So I believe that we open in the living room. Carl, nervous goof, he's doing anything he can to get out of his mom showing up, and Harriette is just great deadpan sass. Did you notice her facial expressions? Like just everything that Jo Marie Payton was giving me in terms of like the sassy attitude, like we're going to do what I'm going to do. I was just all for it.
I was too. She reminds me of my mom immediately, where she's like, this is happening. This is where we are. The decision's already made. Let's man up. And that's her. And I love it.
And it actually reminds me, like, between Reginald's sort of very comical, goofy acting and Jo Marie Payton's sass, it reminds me of why I like sitcoms that are like live action in front of a live studio audience, because I have a theater background. It reminds me so much of theater because they have so much projected, exaggerated energy, and it just really is infectious and just gets you in it. I mean, you have Reginald who's just like, oh, please, Harriette, come on, let's not have my mom come over. And, you know, Jo Marie, she's like, we're having her coming over, Carl. And she's like doing the head sass thing that you see in so much 90s Black sitcoms. It's just, I'm all for it. I love it.
It's so relatable. That's what I love about Family Matters. It's just so relatable. It's like, I feel like I'm sitting with my family in a room.
And Carl, did you notice he's wearing a Police Academy sweatshirt, which is like, oh, that might be a nod to like the 6 Police Academy movies that already came out by that point. And also, yeah, he's a cop. He graduated from Police Academy.
Yes, I did notice his sweater. And then me being a geek, I was like, is this the same police department from the actual Die Hard movie? Because I was looking at the insignia on the shirt. It's not. It's similar, but it's not the same one.
Harriet's red, white, pink, yellow dotted sweater that looked like she was on like she literally looked like a Candyland board.
It is in that early 80s, well, early 90s, late 80s fashion that I love. You know, as soon as I watched the episode, I went and I found the sweater and I ordered it on Amazon. It's not the exact same thing, but it looks very close to it. I am going to wear that thing.
When you actually get it, can you remember to like send me a picture and then we have to like post it up on socials?
Totally. Yes, I will. I'll probably wear it for an episode at some point.
Oh, that would be great. That would be great. All right. So Carl is trying to give excuses. He's mentioning to Harriette that, you know, Mama Winslow could live with his brother Frank in his big apartment in New York City, which makes me wonder what the hell Frank does for a living to afford that.
I want to know because I don't think we ever get to see Carl's brothers throughout the entire show.
We don't. I think we find out at the end of this episode that Mama Winslow raised like 5 or 6 sons, including Carl, and not one of them pays Carl a visit throughout the entire 9-season run of the series. Interesting.
Like they never call, nothing. We never get to hear anything about them.
And then Harriette reminds Carl that Mama Winslow hasn't liked Frank since he took EST, E-S-T. So I looked into it. Did you know what EST meant?
No.
It was a self-help program popular in the 70s and 80s, emphasizing personal responsibility. It promised to transform your life during 2 weekend group sessions with ongoing follow-up seminars. It aggressively encouraged its graduates to enroll family and friends in the program. Some EST graduates were perceived to be smugly committed to getting other people to take responsibility rather than in taking responsibility themselves. This annoyed people and made Estes the target of ridicule. So my guess is that like Frank was pushing Mama Winslow to take Est and it really bugged her. So she was like, all right, Carl's not going to bug me. Let's go to him.
You know what this sounds like? It sounds like his brother joined Scientology.
Probably. So Carl is asking Harriette if his brothers Walter and Calvin could take in Mama Winslow. So again, we have all these brothers that we have never seen before in Carl's side of the family. Carl says Calvin owes him because he helped put that boy through college, which is like, all right. I'm thinking to myself, this sounds like a single parent household. Maybe Carl had to chip in and help pay for college as a young boy. So the real Mother Winslow is different, says Carl.
You only see Holiday Mom. You haven't seen the real mom.
He claims that he'll make her go on a diet. And then Harriette Winslow has that moment where she looks at Carl sassingly and says, Carl, we're talking about your mother. And looks at his belly, not a magician. And then she just kind of walks away. And I was like, I love this show already. I love it.
Best joke from her in this whole episode. I loved it.
Yeah. And, you know, some could say like, oh, fat jokes don't really hold up today. But sometimes like there's just that old fashioned good natured ribbing between husband and wife that regardless of the times, you just can't seem to help.
Right. It's a good thing. It shows love and fun. I love it. So the next highlight in this scene that stood out to me, I remember because I haven't watched it in over like 20 years. But I remember the living room not being so dark and crowded. Like there's so much in the set that was there in the living room in this first episode where it kind of looks like it's hard to navigate. It kind of looks like the set designers were going for this very old, well, I'm not going to say old, I'm going to say vintage and knickknack style house without the tacky knickknacks that could have been there. But everything was much darker. And then the next thing I remember saying to myself, I'm like, when did those plants get there? When did the plants get on the table? There was a plant in the background. And I'm like, I don't remember those plants. And then part of that scene where Carl is talking about his mom coming over and expecting things, he's like, she's going to expect plants. Because we have all these plants here, so you're spending my money on plants. And then Harriette comes back with a manure joke, which I just thought hit so well.
It's a completely normal thing for the set of a pilot episode of a sitcom to be completely different from the sets that you'll see for the rest of the series. Now, the assumption of this is because like when sitcom people, when they make a pilot episode, there's no guarantee that it's going to be turned into like a complete series. A pilot episode is basically like a test for the network. Here's a sample of what could become a long-running television series, what you think. And because it's kind of, they're taking a chance, usually you'll see a different set that'll probably be like cheaper to produce. And yeah, I'm like you. I mean, I noticed completely different set from what we see in the rest of the series. We'll talk about that as we go on, because like there are some parts about the set that didn't quite make sense to me. So Carl and Harriette, obviously, they're having their moment in the living room. And then they move into the kitchen. He was like, oh, how about this? We could move to Miami. She hates bugs. And I was like, when I think about Miami, that's not the first thing I think of. I don't think bugs. Do you think bugs?
I don't think bugs is the first thing I think about in Miami. Even when I was younger, I don't really think about it because we live down south. So bugs weren't really a bad thing.
It would have made sense if Carl was like, oh, Mama Winslow could move to Miami. She hates the humidity. She hates the crime. She hates the drugs. Something like that. But I don't know, maybe back in the 80s, bugs were a big thing in Miami. I would just think that, especially since I was in Miami recently for my honeymoon, I mean, it was probably too hot for a lot of those bugs to be there. I don't know.
I tend to think even back then, Miami wasn't really a big party city for what I remember. So maybe like, oh, this is swampland or something. Are swamps in Miami?
Maybe. I mean, there might be because, when you think of Florida, I mean, there's like random alligators in people's backyards. And I would think that alligators and crocodiles are in swamps. So that's my assumption. I don't know.
I'm going with it.
Laura and Judy in the kitchen as well, and they fight over who gets to hold baby Richie. Why Richie's baby playpen is situated in the middle of the kitchen, I have no idea. Is that a normal thing? Have you seen that with babies?
I don't think so. I mean, the kitchen would be the last place I think I would want the playpen. There are so many sharp things in there.
So we get Carl freaking out about Harriette putting out fresh flowers for Mama Winslow and him saying that he will not be paying for these fresh flowers every day. Yeah, and to go back to your manure comment, Harriette response, these are from our backyard. All you're paying for is manure. And I was trying to think of what that meant. Maybe I was overthinking it too much because I was like, wait a minute, like literally manure? Because that's not what you would usually see in a suburban Chicago neighborhood. Or was that like a poop joke? Like, oh, Carl's fat. He poops a lot. Like, is that what it was?
I mean, now that you mention it, that didn't register for me that it could have been a poop joke.
So Carl and Harriette, they go back to the living room. We see Eddie, I think, for the first time. He comes down holding laundry, trying to get his parents to allow him to go to his friend's Tony's house to watch TV in exchange for doing house chores. He made it seem like an event, Andrew. I don't know. Like, hey, I got to go out. I got this big thing. I'm going to go watch TV at my friend's house. Like, I don't know. He just made it seem like it was this big party.
You know what? It did. And thinking about it now, back then, maybe it was like something that was never going to replay again, where he's like, I'm going to miss it. But I was very confused when he's like, oh, it's a party to go watch TV. I'm like, a TV party?
Like, I knew TV was more prominent in people's everyday lives back in 1989. But like to the point where it's like, yeah, we're going to make plans to go watch TV.
John, I feel old because I feel like I have actually done that for this show, actually.
I had a high school sweetheart and we made plans on Friday night to just watch a movie together before making out. So there was one moment there. And there was a friend of mine who I just went over to her house and we watched TV too. So yes, now that I remember back in high school, that was a thing. Even in the late 2000s to just go over someone's house and be like, oh yeah, you want to watch something on TV? Like that was a thing.
Yes. It got weirder for me in the scene once we get to that portion of what time it was at. I was like, this is kind of weird.
And I wrote down the same thing. But let's talk about Eddie. So I think I had a fashion comment. He was wearing some Jordans that I could easily see somebody wear today.
Oh, yeah. I would totally buy those. Those look like really good. The fashion in this first episode, I have to say, was very good. Everybody had a piece of something that I would want to have.
Harriet's Candyland sweater, Eddie's Jordans. It's so varied.
It is. You're like color blockings here. We've got floral prints. We've got solid colors. And then none of the colors are overpowering from anyone. I was like obsessed with the fact that all the colors complement each character because each character has a piece of the same color that the parents have on.
I didn't even pick up on that. Can you give me like a specific example? Like, where did you notice that?
Let's take Carl's sweater and Eddie when he first came in. His shirt that he has on has the same hue in it. And then Laura, when we see her sweater that she's wearing and Harriet's sweater has these nautical horizontal lines that are on it for the bottom of her sweater. And Laura's start in the middle. And then she's color blocked with blue on top that complements Carl's blue that he has on in the scene.
Did you have like a fashion degree? How do you know about things like this?
I just watched a lot of Project Runway.
All right, there you go. That'll do it. That'll do it. So Carl wants to get more info out of Eddie about this night at Tony's. And this is the moment I think you and I were relating. Like, so Eddie admits that he wants to be at Tony's at 2 a.m. And I'm like, what? How old are you? And how do you think at your age you're going to get away with going to a friend's house at 2 a.m?
Right? I was not allowed to stay out until 2 a.m. until I moved into my own apartment.
It's later revealed that he's 15 years old. And at that age, I mean, you're lucky if your parents let you go out as late as like 10 o'clock. So for 2 a.m, it's like, wow, Eddie is really reaching.
He really is. And I think now as an adult watching this episode, I'm kind of like, oh, what were you going to go do at 2 a.m. in the morning? Your parents are right here.
Well, we get confirmation by Harriette that the curfew is at 10. And then at this point, we see Mama Winslow entering from the very front door of the house. Comment on the pilot episode set. When the door opens, either Carl, Harriette, whoever, greeting Mama Winslow, she's entering from this interior lobby hallway looking area. There's like a table, there's a portrait, it's like a green wall. And I'm like, that doesn't look like the exterior of a house. That looks like maybe the Winslows live in an apartment building or some retirement home. It was, did you pick up on that?
Yes. I was like, how did she ring a doorbell when the door does not open to the outside of the house? Where is this doorbell? Because it sounded very big. And then I was looking, I'm like, where is she coming from? And then I'm trying to like play it all in my mind, looking at the picture of the house that they show in the opening. And I'm like, even the picture of the house would not have like a lobby that you walk through to get to the person's front door. It reminds me of the entrance to the house on Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And that's what I was picking up vibes on, where there's just this entrance into a hallway before you get to the front door.
I remember that. I don't know. I mean, maybe the Winslows for just one episode, they live in like this multi-story house and they're like on the 8th or 9th floor and they're sharing a house with like 7 other families down below them. But now we get the light-skinned, maybe secret mother of the original Judy Winslow, Rachel Crawford. She's comically carrying all of Mama Winslow's luggage as she comes through the front door of this maybe apartment building / retirement home. Laura and Judy come down from upstairs to happily greet Mama Winslow, and Rachel looks at the girls like, who's watching my baby Richie? Laura and Judy clumsily point to each other. She is. And Rachel frantically runs upstairs. I don't know, I mean, how she thought it was a good idea to have these very young kids in charge of a baby, beyond me. But there you go. That's parenting for you back in the day.
Yeah, they were kind of just like, take your cousin, have fun with him. He'll be fine as long as he's breathing.
Exactly. I wrote down here that Carl and Harriette go into the kitchen. Carl is still pouting about his mom living with him. It's interesting how, Harriette's like, Carl, your mother is living in this house, whether you like it or not. But it's like, well, it's Carl's mother. And he could put his foot down and say, no, Mom, this is crossing a boundary. I don't think this is a good idea. But Carl is playing that stereotypical sitcom dad where it's like, even though they're supposed to be the man of the house, they're actually like the funny, bumbly coward. And the wife is actually in charge.
Yes, it's very honest. It's very funny that Carl is a cop, but he doesn't like confrontation or taking charge in a situation. Not at home.
When Laura and Judy, they're talking with Mama Winslow, and then we suddenly reveal that Mama Winslow, she has been friends or has worked for all these ultra famous people. Like all of a sudden it's like, oh, she used to work with the Queen of England. She used to work for the royal family. And it's like, how the fuck did you get to living with your son in suburban Chicago from all that?
Yeah, I want to know what happened. Did you not have a savings account? I mean, banking for Black people back then was not the easiest, but did something happen and you just didn't ever save your money? Because it just doesn't seem like she would be poor.
Or two, she was just kind of coasting on free experiences with all these famous people. And at a certain point, these famous people were like, well, sorry, we're running out of free experiences. You got to make it on your own. And she's like, oh, no, I'm an old woman. Time to go live with my son.
What if Mama Winslow was a roadie or a hippie this whole time?
I would believe it. All right. So Harriette offers Mama Winslow iced tea. And Mama Winslow says, no, I don't drink caffeine. And I was like, oh, I literally had to Google this, Andrew. Did you already know that iced tea has caffeine? Because I didn't know.
Yes. I mean, I'm obsessively a drinker of iced tea. So for me, it always gives me that little kick. So then to hear the joke, I was like, ooh, for pre-made iced tea, this must have been that strong 80s caffeine.
I guess. I mean, it has 8 milligrams. Is 8 milligrams a lot of caffeine?
I'm going to go with maybe. And the only reason why I'm saying maybe is because at the time that we're recording this recently, some girl drank like 2 large of those lemonades from Panera that have caffeine in them. And I think it was like 400 grams or milligrams of it. So it's something. A lot is a lot in it. 400
milligrams versus 8 milligrams. That's a big difference. I mean, look, I don't see people being like, oh my God, I got to stay buzzing awake from work. Let me get this iced tea. Like, I don't see people doing that.
Neither do I. I see them reaching for the coffee.
Yeah, that's what I do every morning. We have Eddie whining to Mama Winslow about not being able to watch the Rambo marathon at his friend Tony's house. Yes, Rambo. Do you know how many Rambo movies came out?
I think there's 6.
three, four, five, actually five Rambo movies. And by 1989, three came out.
I love Rambo. I've seen all of the movies. I just couldn't remember how many there were. But now it's kind of making a little more sense why this would be on at 2 a.m. They were long movies, but they were violent. I mean, if you're going to watch on television back then, it wouldn't have come on until super late.
And Mama Winslow clearly crossing a boundary, telling Eddie his father must not remember what it was like to be a teenager, and she'll convince him to let Eddie go over to Tony's. She hugs Eddie happily with cheery music playing in the background to signal the end of what I would consider a very long-ass scene. Scene 2 starts in the kitchen. Rachel is feeding Richie in the kitchen, and a very dressed-up Harriette saying that she cannot wait to read Rachel's novel. I did not know in the beginning that Rachel kind of sold herself as the writer of these Jaws romantic thriller books. Did you remember that from the early episodes?
That I remembered because I always thought it was super cool.
Harriette I thought she seemed a bit too dressed up for dinner at home. I don't know, maybe it's because I'm just used to not dressing up often, but do you think it was the appropriate amount of dressed up for dinner with the mother-in-law at home?
Okay, because Harriette's fashion would inspire some of my drag, I think it was a little over the top, but those shoulder pads were so crisp under that shirt that I just had to admire it. I'm like, you look good for dinner.
Mama Winslow asks what's for dinner. Harriette says meatloaf, and Mama says she doesn't like it, but maybe Harriette's is different. She asked if it has meat in it. Mama Winslow is wearing a dress that my grandmother could have worn to church back in the day. Yeah, that's what I was looking at. I was like, oh yeah, that kind of reminds me of those nightgowns that my grandmother wore around the house, and also probably something that she could have worn to the Catholic Church.
Mm-hmm. Very Jesus appropriate.
And it also had a maid's dress vibe to it.
It could have been from the Queen of England.
That's true. And I think this dress had a flower at the center of her chest. Mama Winslow claims that the mushrooms Harriette is making will give her gas. Harriette says, Mama, why don't you go in the kitchen and relax? And as she shuts the swinging kitchen door on Mama Winslow, he turns around and says, because I've got one nerve left and you're leaning on it. So that was a very short scene. Rachel and Laura in Rachel's bedroom. So this is where Rachel is needing Laura's thoughts about a sequel to her book where Chastity's lover comes back even though he was eaten by a shark. Would you want to read Rachel's books?
I would. The fact that this character's gotten eaten by a shark and now she's debating how do I bring this person back, I would love to read it.
So when Laura asks Rachel if her dad is going to kick her grandma out, it's revealed Rachel's husband, Uncle Robert, passed away, leaving her a widowed single mother, and Carl was nice enough to let her and Richie live in the Winslow household. So in other words, he's likely not going to kick Mama Winslow out. Carl is going to give her a chance. Laura wants the adjustment to happen now because she's getting a rash. And again, this is where I had to look up the assistance of Google. Can you have a rash from stress? Now, have you had a rash from stress?
If I get stress rashes, it's not fun.
Okay, so this is what I found on Google. Stress rashes often appear as raised red bumps called hives. So that's what you got?
Mm-hmm.
They can affect any part of the body, but often a stress rash is on the face, neck, chest, or arms. Which one was it for you?
I would get them along my hairline on the sides, and then I would get them across my chest. It would not feel good if I was super stressed, and it would just generate the hives from me scratching and then my skin being irritated. Not fun.
So it would kind of look like this red thing of armor around your chest?
Well, I mean, since my skin's darker, it didn't look too red, but it was raised dark bumps. And it kind of looked like, have you ever seen a keloid?
I don't even know what that word is.
Or a skin growth or a tag or a scab, honestly. Say it's gotten irritated from rubbing or something.
So continuing from Google, hives may range from tiny dots to large welts and may form in clusters. They may be itchy or cause a burning or tingling sensation. So was it itchy? Was it burning, tingling, all that stuff?
It started as itchy and then after scratching, it'd be burning.
Never knew that you could get a rash from stress. So thank you, Laura Winslow, and thank you, Andrew Vandertunt.
We love to share our experience.
We go to scene 4, dinner time in the kitchen. Carl is moping on about his mother taking his dinner seat and Harriette moping about her meatloaf being insulted. Carl reminding Harriette that this was a bad idea. Harriette responding with more great sass. Love you, Jo Marie Peyton France. If you say I told you so, you're going to be wearing this meatloaf. And then Mama Winslow busts into the kitchen having the nerve to be like, I'm sorry, honey, we got to eat now or I'm not going to be regular for a week. And for the umpteenth time, I'm going to Google and I'm like, can you really be constipated if you don't eat dinner the time you think you should be eating dinner?
I want to know the answer here. I'm going to go with a yes, but I don't know.
Okay, so 1, dinner time is ready when the host says it's ready. You can't just demand. I mean, if it's a home-cooked meal that's taking some work, let Harriette do her thing, Mama Winslow, so shut up. 2, Yes, you can get constipated from under eating. That's what it says, because your body has less food to convert into stools, which leads to that constipation. So that's slightly different. I mean, I think that if you specifically say, oh, if we don't have dinner like right now, I'm going to be constipated for a week. Like, I think that's a little bit dramatic, but if you're not eating as much as you should be eating overall, then yes, you could actually get constipated. And I didn't know that was possible. I just thought that if you ate lots of crappy processed foods, that would lead to constipation. But no, apparently if you just, really have a terrible small diet, you're not able to poop.
That just sounds so unpleasant. Oh, I feel sorry for you, but I can see how she's being dramatic. My grandmother on my dad's side was that way of like, I have to eat right now or I'm not going to be okay. And we're like, it's not that serious, dear.
Yeah. And my favorite moment from you just a second ago where you're like, oh, you can't poop. You got to poop. And you know what? Sometimes you have those poops that really feel good. If it's just like a regular smooth experience, it feels good. And when you can't do it and you can't do it and you can feel it, it doesn't feel so good.
It doesn't. You're just like, why can't I get this out of me? And then once you finally get to have a little poop, it is a very nice, relaxing moment.
Even if it's like the tiniest poop, you're just like, oh, yes, I let the Lindenberg out of my ass.
Yes, it's like all of the evil is gone.
All right, so Laura, Judy, and Rachel joining the dinner table. And again, Judy wearing a pink dress that looks like something you put on a doll if you wanted to prepare it for a tea party. I'm so obsessed with just how awful Judy's fashion is. At least the first Judy. The second Judy, fine. She dresses like a normal modern child. But this first Judy, it's like, maybe that's why the producers thought it couldn't work, because they were just dressing her so badly and thought, oh, this doesn't fit in with the rest of the family. Well, maybe it doesn't fit in with the rest of the family because you need to change her freaking wardrobe.
Right. This Judy is from Victorian England. I did not see how she got there. Josh, she's a time traveler. She's from a different timeline of Family Matters.
Family Matters, O'Shire.
Yes.
Thy family matters.
Wow, we can go down a rabbit hole. It won't come into effect until season 5, but I now have a theory.
I can't wait to talk about it. All right, Eddie comes into the scene. He has a pink shirt and blue vest. Back in the day, the vest was a very casual clothing fashion statement. Now I think it's mostly reserved to formal wear. Like, say, when, my wedding, I wore a gray vest with my gray suit. But yeah, no, back then people just casually, like, they had a vest, they had a t-shirt, they had maybe some jeans. So did you ever have the vest thing as a fashion statement back in the day?
I did. I had a couple of different vests, and I'd always have like a little t-shirt on under it, and then some kind of like neck thing, like a necklace or something.
And then Eddie has this necklace on in this scene that looks like something that you would see on like a Texas cowboy shirt. And you're from Texas, so you know what I'm talking about.
It's a bolo tie.
I literally was typing in Texas cowboy shirts on Google to find out what the hell it is. And you spent time in Texas, so you would know.
Mm-hmm. I've had a couple of them. They're pretty cool. Just don't let someone yank on it. It will choke you. But they're a pretty cool accessory.
All right, so Carl is wondering why Eddie is so unusually dressed up for a family dinner when he should really be asking that question to Harriette. Okay, so yes, now I remember what Harriette dressed like in this scene. She looks like she was going to a nightclub in the 80s. I'm going to go out and dance with my friends, like after dinner somewhere, and maybe we saw some guys that were like secretly sniffing cocaine or something.
You can never have an 80s moment without a bump of coke. And there with you, she looks like she's going to go out to some little club and just like cut up a rug with some friends. Maybe those were her plans after dinner.
So Eddie claims that he's dressed for grandma, but you can tell he's lying and intends to go to his friend Tony's house. They say grace at the dinner table. And a funny moment that in Carl's prayer, we ask that you deliver us from evil, even if it were to walk right through our front door. Amen.
It was a good moment.
So again, Reginald plays it well. The adult married man struggling with his controlling mother. Mama Winslow asking Eddie if he has plans for tonight, and Eddie doing that teenage thing where he plays the victim, saying that he had planned to go to a party, but his dad would not let him. Mama Winslow surprisingly backs Carl and tells Eddie his father has his best interest at heart to not allow him to go to a party where there can be drinking. And a word I haven't heard in a while, Andrew, carousing.
Carousing. I'm gonna carouse tonight.
What does carousing mean? You know what? Let me look on the Googles.
I feel like that's like roughhousing or like petting, heavy petting.
Oh, it actually has to do with alcohol. The activity of drinking alcohol and enjoying oneself with others in a noisy, lively way. So because it sounds similar to carousel, I thought, oh, they're going to be drinking and they're just going to be on fake horses all night.
Can we do that the next time we're together? That sounds fun.
You know what? For you, yes, I will. Yes. For no one else, but for you, yes, I will drink and get on fake horses. Yeah.
We're riding the fake horses to the bar and we have to tie them up outside.
Usually those fake carousel horses, they just kind of stay in place. They don't really move anywhere. But if we could find a way to make them move, that would be great.
God, I will figure it out. I will do this.
I appreciate your determination. Carl tells his mama there won't be any of that. Just friends watching TV really late. So no drinking and carousing. Eddie just literally wants to watch TV with his friends as late as 2 a.m.
The fact that Eddie was so dressed up makes me think he was not going to go watch television.
If I'm going to someone's house at 2 a.m. and claiming I'm watching TV, it's probably going to be a booty call. I'm probably going to be expecting some dirty hanky-wanky. And look, I'm not here to encourage teenagers to do that. I'm just saying that that's usually what people who have hormones would think. Is it really his friend Tony's house? Is it actually going to be a girl's house? Does he have a secret homosexual thing with Tony?
And, that's the thing. I'm sitting here. I'm like, I don't know. And then I'm like, okay, the character's 15. So I can kind of see doing a Rambo marathon. I can see a Rambo marathon that maybe ends at like 11 o'clock at night. But I'm just trying to think back at 2 a.m. in the morning. And that's when we're starting. That's not even when we're going to just be out till we're starting at 2 a.m.
So I was confused by that. I was kind of going back and forth in my mind. I was like, okay, is he just going to be there still at 2 a.m. or so it starts at 2 a.m?
It starts at 2 a.m. I won't jump ahead because we get to more of the information in it in the later scenes. But it's just one of those things that threw me for a loop. I'm like, why is he so dressed up? Why are they just saying they're going to go watch TV? Something about this still isn't making sense.
All right. Mama Winslow is like, really? That's why Eddie can't go, Carl? TV? And then Eddie sulkingly says the only reason that his dad won't let him go is because his curfew is at 10. All right, reasonable. Mama Winslow laughs at that and tells him to lighten up. So we have an uh-oh moment. Mama Winslow is insisting to Eddie that he should go to the party. And then you see that look on Carl's face like, does this woman really just raise my child for me?
Like in my house?
But then suddenly Carl just doesn't become the comical coward that we see. Like suddenly just turns into a stern, authoritative, direct parent and tells his mother that Eddie's curfew is at 10. That's his final.
Yeah, he picked up his big cop energy at that moment.
Did you say cop, C-O-P?
Yes, C-O-P, not the other word for chicken.
Yeah, he just held up like literally a chicken and was like, yeah, Mama Winslow. I feel like a crazy black father somewhere in this country would do that. They would hold up a chicken, choke it, and they just, go to your room.
I feel like that would happen, and it's terrifying, but hilarious all at the same time.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden, Eddie just like fucking explodes. He just loses his temper. He's like, hey, it's not fair. I'm 15 years old, and you still treat me like a kid. Meanwhile, I'm thinking, well, you are a kid. When you're 15, of course, you think you're like 35, but...
You're fully a child, Eddie. I still am just not believing this TV thing, but his temper tantrum was actually kind of funny when he stormed off. I'm like, I don't ever remember having the balls to do that at home.
Yeah, and you know what? Honestly, I gotta say props to Carl for not matching his son's temper. He was just kind of like Eddie. He was just saying his name in like a very calm, surprised tone. Harriette gets up, she says, don't worry, I'll talk to him. So Mama Winslow says to Carl in that frowny deadpan face, give a man a badge. And then we go to scene 5, the living room. We start there. Harriette comes downstairs and tells Carl that she talked to Eddie and he's not coming out of his room until he's 18. And then he'll move to France. Typical teenage dramatics. Were you that dramatic when you were a teenager?
I was always like, I'm moving to Mexico where you can do whatever you want as a kid. Meanwhile, I had no idea where Mexico even was.
New Mexico?
So I knew where that was, but I was like, you're still a kid there. I want to be an adult.
All right, so Carl blames all of this on his mother, and while he's doing this, points to his chair in the living room as a way of saying that his mother cannot sit in his chair. Did you notice that this is a weird pink seat?
It is hideous. It looks like a Pepto-Bismol pill.
Which Carl, I guess, doesn't need because he just has so much manure coming out of him that goes into the yard outside. You know who needs that, though, is Mama Winslow, because apparently she just cannot get regular for a week if she doesn't have her dinner by 6:20.
Right? Oh, my God, John, you just broke the internet right now.
So, yeah, we have a pink one-seat couchy chair that does not match with the rest of the living room at all. I would say the closest match from that pink couchy chair is, I think Carl is wearing a pinkish purple button-down, but everything else in that living room, it's like a bleak green and brown.
It looks like olive oil. Like the person was like, I know what I want this room to look like, a bottle of extra virgin olive olive oil. And then you have this random pink chair.
And speaking of being regular, I've heard that if you drink a shot of olive oil, that it really gets the tummy going. Is that true?
Does it lube up the poop?
I think it does. I'm sure someone's listening and just like, I tuned in for a recap of Family Matters, not a whole thesis on pooping.
Well, we just broke your mind if you tuned in for that because you're getting that review. But we're also talking about keeping you regular and drugs like Pepto-Bismol.
This should be renamed the Not So Delicious first episode of the Delicious Recap. So despite the direct sternness Carl showed to his mother in the kitchen in the last scene, he goes right back to cowardly and sheepishly tells Harriette to tell his mother off for him. And then Harriet's like, she's your mother.
That's one of the best moments.
So Carl then concedes and says he'll talk to his mom. He goes to the front door. Harriette reminds him his mother is on the back porch. Carl says he just needs to take a walk to figure out what he's going to say, and then asks Harriette if she needs anything from Canada because he just really doesn't want to deal with this. And from Chicago to Canada, that sounds like a far walk.
You know what? I can relate. When I don't want to talk to somebody about something important, I would do that, like walk all the way to Canada.
Let me just take a peaceful walk to another country and I'll be right back with you. All right, here we go. Scene 6, back porch, deep chat with Carl and Mama Winslow. Back porch of maybe apartment building or a retirement home. We don't know yet. It's not completely a house.
This building that they're in, the layout of it is like Willy Wonka level of crazy.
Carl tells Mama Winslow he knows it's been hard for her since Dad died, having to raise 5 sons by herself. Carl theorizes that since she had to take control in that situation, it's natural she would do the same when she moved into his house. And as Carl is calmly assuring his mom that he's not a little boy, he's all grown up and can take care of his family and his household. And then, oh God, that cute, slow, melodramatic keyboard background music that you hear in a sitcom episode, like towards the end where they're having like an emotional, deep message that starts to creep in when you know like, oh, they're going to get deep here.
Yes. You know that music draws you in and then the lighting gets a little softer. They put everything in a 2-shot and you're like, oh, I'm about to cry.
Either that or there's about to be some like weird incestual thing going on between Carl and Mama Winslow.
Here comes the chicken. He's pulling it out.
Look at my cock, Mama Winslow. Look at my cock. No, this is innocent. This is actually a pure family moment. Let's not ruin this because I think we may have traumatized childhoods right now. Again, props to Carl. He remains calm, patient, understanding, direct when talking to his mom about respecting that him and Harriette will run their own household. Mama Winslow responds to it maturely instead of taking it personally. Props to her.
She really did good. I mean, at first it almost felt when she was about to jump off the couch, but she really understood.
Mama Winslow follows up with a suggestion to Carl that he should learn to trust his son more. I said to myself, because I felt like it kind of reeked of her not completely getting his point. Like, all right, yes, parents need to trust their children, but as you and I have already mentioned a million times in this episode, there's trusting your children, and then there's just saying, sure, 2 a.m, you're still a minor. What could happen? I don't know. I just feel like that's a really deep trust.
I don't trust myself to be out at 2 a.m. A child, I don't agree with it.
And look, starting small with like an 11 or 12 midnight curfew, like, okay, cool. 2 a.m. might be pushing it. So anywho, Carl takes her advice, says, I love you to Mama Winslow. She says, I love you back. She says she'll apologize to Harriette and will try to be sincere by choking down that meatloaf, which doesn't really seem like an apology, but okay, we'll accept it for sitcom purposes.
These people haven't been to therapy yet.
1989 was not really a popular year for therapy. We're like 30 something years ahead of the mental health wave.
I mean, I love that they have this like moment where they do talk and they try to work things out. But I'm with you. It felt a little rushed and unfinished when it just ends with, oh, I love you. There's no problems here anymore. And it's like, we didn't really address the issues at this point.
Yeah, that's the difficult thing when you have a 23-minute episode that you have to work with is you have to have the laughs and have the comical situation and then resolve it all in a narrow 23 minutes. All right, we get to scene 7, Eddie's room. Eddie is spying through a window upstairs in his room. He has his binoculars. He's like, come on, don't go in the other room. I don't even know what the hell he's spying on at first. What were your thoughts when you saw Eddie spying through the binoculars? What do you think he was spying on?
I immediately thought he was looking at a naked woman. I'm like, he's looking at a naked woman, like a neighbor who's like getting naked or something in the attic window, like peers into her bedroom. That's immediately what I thought was happening.
So interestingly enough, I thought that like he was spying on Mama Winslow and Carl talking, and then maybe he saw like them separate, and to him that was like, oh no, that means I can't go out. Maybe they didn't work something out. I don't know. Like they're on the same page, they're hugging. I don't know, that I can't go out at 2 a.m. when I'm 15. So enter Carl. He thanks Eddie for willing to sleep in the attic so Mama Winslow could sleep in his room. And I'm just like, I'm sorry. I know that is your mother, Carl, but if I was to choose between my son and essentially a guest coming into my home, I think it would be really weird to be like, oh, son, you know this bedroom that you're like all cushy and comfortable in, and that's your room? Go sleep up in a probably cold attic. Your grandmother's going to be here forever.
Looking at the attic and the scenery behind it, I'm like, it looks like this is not insulated. He's got to be cold up there. And I am with you. Like, I wouldn't have anybody sleeping in the attic.
I guess it's a good attic that works for Eddie. I don't know. I mean, he has a t-shirt on, so it must be, well, it's late September, so it must be.
It can't be too cold. Not yet.
Yeah. I guess it's still kind of warm in Chicago. All right. So Carl tells Eddie that he realizes he needs to start trusting him if he's going to learn responsibility. And then Carl looks out of one of the windows with Eddie's binoculars and says, oh my, and then puts the binoculars down to continue the conversation. And that's when I thought, Andrew, oh, okay. So Eddie, yeah, he probably was peeping at a naked woman from across the street. Okay.
I love it. He's a total peeper, and it was his moment to live.
So then Carl decides to change Eddie's curfew to 11, which again, I mean, his curfew was originally 10, so slowly moving it to 11. Love that. And a very ungrateful Eddie focuses on the fact that it still means he cannot go to the party. Carl makes an exception for just this party. And now, of course, Eddie is grateful and thanks and hugs his dad, and then asks if he can get his allowance doubled. Carl says, don't push it. And then we hear the sounds of Rachel, Harriette, and Mama Winslow singing, he's got the whole world in his hands, which is a church song I have not heard in quite some time.
I haven't heard that in a very long time, and I haven't seen people gather around a piano to sing in a very long time for it.
Carl hears them from upstairs in Eddie's attic room, and then Carl joins them downstairs, sings along. Harriet comes over to Carl, asks how Eddie is doing, and if he's moving out. Carl says, no one is moving out or moving in. And then all four go back to taking us to Black Church, singing that song. They got the whole world in his hands.
Yes, they had a real black ending, and I liked it. I was like, ooh, this is like black. All
right, and then we see Laura and Judy come down the stairs really quickly as the camera pans out from the living room to the exterior window, and further panning out to see the house and an increasing bird's eye view of their neighborhood. Fun fact, that closing shot, someone just took a camera on a helicopter and just kind of zoomed out to that beautiful view of Chicago in the nighttime. And we end our pilot episode.
I didn't realize that they were in a helicopter for that. The whole time, I thought this was just a fake superimposed photo that they've been going in and out of. But now I know.
I mean, nowadays, you could just easily use a drone to capture that same footage. But back then, someone actually had to risk their life, go on a helicopter just to take that brief zooming out ending shot. Lasted like 2 seconds.
That is amazing. You know, that person got paid like tons of money just for that 2-second shot.
So Andrew, overall thoughts on this episode?
I personally love this episode. One of the things that I loved about this episode the most was the immediate film nostalgia that I got as soon as I saw the house. As soon as I saw each character come on the screen, I was like, oh my gosh, I have this warm, fuzzy feeling inside. And these social interactions that we have with our family members are far more deep than I ever put emphasis on as a kid. And all these little moments of the show just made it so much better to see. Of course, I'm obsessed with the fashion, and I'm obsessed with everything else that has occurred in this one episode, being a whole where you get to see a little bit of each character, except our weird Judy Winslow. Judy and Stairs don't mix, because at the end of the episode, Judy comes down the stairs. We never see Valerie again.
I didn't pick up on that.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of reminds me of a sitcom, Boy Meets World, which I'm listening to a recap podcast of. The original younger sister in the family, Morgan Matthews. She's like the little baby, whatever. She goes up to her room, is never seen again. And then they bring in a slightly older Morgan, like maybe 2 seasons later, and they make a joke about it. Like, oh, Morgan, you were up in your room for a really long time. And I wonder if they make that same meta joke for Judy, like when she leaves and never comes back.
I've got to, you know what? Once we get there, I'm going to have to analyze it because I don't remember, but I wouldn't doubt it.
Well, my overall thoughts, I thought it was a safe, sweet, occasionally comical episode. I would say Carl and Harriette Winslow are the standouts. I mean, man, Reginald VelJohnson and Jo Marie Payton. I mean, you could tell like why they were picked from Perfect Strangers to have their own show. There's just something about their dynamic as a couple is just really, really clear. It's funny, it's comforting, and I want to see more of it. I look forward to seeing more of it. You know, it does have that television pilot vibe, this very first episode, of like a beginning, middle, and end. And that's how pilot episodes are with sitcoms. It's like, you know, we don't know if this is going to get a second episode, third episode, so might as well give you a sample of these characters as if they were in a self-contained movie. And then if we have a second episode, then we'll figure it out. Do I need to watch these people again, the Winslows and blah, blah, blah? Like, I don't feel that urge. And that could be like, it could be kind of a sign of how television sitcoms were produced back then. And I don't know. I mean, what do you think? I mean, do you think that if Steve Urkel hadn't come along, you would watch this version of Family Matters for much longer? What do you think?
I would actually watch it. Maybe not all 9 seasons, but I would probably have stayed up until like season 4 if it was just the Winslows and Steve Urkel never came.
Yeah, my feeling after watching this episode is I don't have the urge to see these people, like a good cliffhanger from some other show. But would I see him again? Sure.
This right now, just the pilot itself gives that energy of like, you're going to feel good no matter what. Watch this when your life is going through hell and maybe you feel a little bit better.
I think a good analogy for this is this version of Family Matters. It's like a blanket in the summertime where, all right, there are moments where I could use it, where the AC is getting a little bit high in the house and it would be nice and comfy. And then there are moments where it's like, all right, I'm a little warm. I'm good. So it's like that on and offness. That's what I'm feeling so far.
I know what I'm getting here. I know what the bread and butter is. I know that meat is not wheat germ. It's actual meat. I know what is happening in this plate of food, but hopefully there's more to come.
Oh, and there will be more to come. Hint, did I do that? Like that will be coming soon.
Oh, I cannot wait.
To you listening, thank you for bearing with us. This is a first episode. Like the pilot episode of Family Matters, may seem scrappy, may seem like we're experimenting and we're figuring stuff out. If from this first episode you like us, we encourage you to subscribe, rate, and review the Delicious Recap Family Matters wherever you listen to your fine podcasts. We have a Gmail, Andrew, for anybody who wants to, ask questions, have comments, concerns. thedeliciousrecap@gmail.com. That is the Gmail address. Simply thedeliciousrecap@gmail.com. And you can follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Delicious Recap Podcast. Our next episode, Season 1, Episode 2, Two Income Family. Original air date, September 29th, 1989. Andrew, are you feeling delicious for that one?
I'm feeling delicious for that one because you know why? I was officially 1 year old in one day when that episode came out.
There you go. I'm trying to figure out what's like a catchphrase we could use to sign off. How about this one? Let delicious ring.
I like that. Deliciousness ringing. Let the deliciousness ring. I'm down.
Yeah, because like let freedom ring, let delicious ring.
Yes. Don't rain on it. I like that. Yes.